This meeting is being recorded.
Great. A warm welcome to our Leaders Exchange session co-hosted by Bridge Labs. I'm Avinash, one of the founders of Global Talent Exchange. It's an absolute honor and my privilege to be hosting an eminent panel like you. We essentially are an exclusive, global recruiting platform, enabling companies in India to look at global tech hubs, talent in global tech hubs, or mobilizing talent from skill-rich areas to areas with skill shortages. And Bridge Labs is India's largest skill-to-job platform for deep tech talent that gives guaranteed outcomes for both talent and business. Our collective endeavor, however, is to bridge the talent gap in India, and that's how we kind of come together. So to begin with, to set the context, I just want to kind of, say, in the last 2 years, a great workplace disruption has happened, and we're still kind of figuring out the new normal. Navigating the talent market and, changing scenario has its own challenges. The great attrition persists, employer-employee dynamics appear to be changing, and quitting is up, but at the same time, are the wages, rising, right? There's a whooping 63% companies in India reporting shortage of talent, mainly in the IT, engineering, emerging, areas. Government, of course, government and a lot of India IT companies have made huge efforts in launching various programs to bridge the emerging tech skill gap. However, the state of employability still remains questionable, right? The university level education in India is primarily focused on imparting theory-based, knowledge. Only 40% of the total graduating engineers opt for internship or hands-on experience with projects and stuff like that. To bridge this gap, however, grouping talent will have to be mapped to the roles in demand in the market. So we will listen more from the eminent panel here from experts like yourselves. To do this, we have Neeraja. I'm sure a few of you know her. So Neeraja is a consultant with Aspire for Her, where she mentors women aspiring to grow in their careers. She also conducts various training programs on leadership and behavioral skills. She switched her career to work in the gender diversity space after a successful career in the IT industry, managing large teams, delivery of IT projects, operational excellence and customer delight for large banking captives for 25 years. Prior to this, she served as a director at National Education for Society of Karnataka. She was also the head of Jobs for a Foundation, which was set up to bridge the gender gap in India. She has been invited by various prestigious forums like Lean-In, IEEE, PMI, TIE across the globe to deliver talks on various topics. Networking for Results and How to Tell Your Story are two of her signature programs. She is currently writing her first book titled You Have Arrived, No Glass Ceiling, No Broken Rungs, No Glass Cliffs, which she believes will be a large influence on the readers, especially to the young girls and women in terms of navigating their life and career successfully. She has won multiple awards, most recently being her Rising Award in the Women in Impact category. She's also been featured as one of the 40 women who have traversed their life journey from ordinary to extraordinary in the book of Magical 40 and 40. There's a lot more, I'm sure. In fact, we had Dr. Smita Ranganathan, who was actually supposed to moderate this. Unfortunately, she's kind of, had an accident and injured her back. She was not able to come. And we were fortunate to have Neeraja come in to, take this, moderate this session. Over to you, Neeraja.
So much, Avinash, and we wish Dr. Smita a speedy recovery. And I'm so glad to have the opportunity to hear from all the esteemed leaders today on this very interesting topic. So I was reading up a little bit yesterday as NASSCOM's in our report, which kind of, also talks the same things that Avinash was mentioning in terms of the demand supply gap in the tech talent. It's a global phenomenon, and India also has this gap, and it states it's at 21.1%. Of course, the gap in the Indian tech industry also, is huge, and we're going to kind of, deliberate on why and what can be done around this. And we need to use the next 90, 100 minutes to kind of, talk about this, gain the insights, learn from each other, and see how we are able to kind of tackle the so-called war for talent. But before we start that, in terms of how to tackle the talent gap, talk about how can we re-engineer the recruitment strategy to capture maximum value, I think it would be great for each of us to do a quick 60-second kind of an elevator pitch introduction, while Avinash took a lot of time to introduce me. Thank you for that. But it would be good to get a quick introduction of all the panelists here. And if along with that, you could give us your opening comment on this topic, which is how do we tackle the talent gap? How can we re-engineer the recruitment strategy to capture the maximum value? I think that would be starting off on a high note. Can we start with Anshula?
Sure. Thank you, Neeraja, and thank you, GTX platform. Great to be here. My name is Anshula Verma, and what you see on the screen is my maiden name. I currently am, so I come with over 20 years of experience in talent acquisition. I've been with EY for the last 12 to 13 years. So consulting is something which has grown on me, as you can see. I'm based out of Gurgaon. And by virtue of being in talent acquisition, I think the last 3 years have been phenomenal. Challenging, phenomenal, frustrating, but a huge learning and experiences unheard of. I think eye-opener experiences for all of us. I think two things that we all picked up as a team. I can talk for me and my team here. One, you have to keep your people close in times like these, and they are hugely changing times. And the second is the digital intervention is something which people experimented with like never before. So those are the two mantras that we sort of discovered for ourselves. Keeping your people intact, keeping your teams close to yourself, not losing talent because you lose a lot of knowledge base, and just digitizing yourself, your processes to bring more efficiency.
Thank you, Anshula. Shrina, would you like to go next?
Sure, thank you, and good morning, everybody. Actually, it's a little weird these days because I'm working on European timings, and this morning time is some personal time and me time, but good to be back working on some Indian timing. Been around in the HR fraternity for about 22 years, I would say, and I've done a variety of roles. I started my life as a recruiter, runs in my blood, but over the years done variety of roles, including heading HR for a startup, grew from 0 to 35 million in 5 years. That was some great journey, but all of it was talent acquisition because we had to grow from grounds up. Been a part of a couple of M&A scenarios. Every time my organization, wherever I was, got acquired in small or big way. The latest being, so I joined a company called Sintel in 2015. 2018, we got acquired by Atos. So, and before that, the startup which we were running got acquired by Renault Nissan. And before that, Satyam Computers, Tech Mahindra. So 3 or 4 of those scenarios, huge learning. And I've had experiences of ramping up on one side And when and situations like Tech Mahindra, Satyam, we had to reverse integrate into other vendors and into the customer. So there's always been uh, talent and talent and talent throughout life. So it's wonderful to be here. Um, I have some very strong views on. Of course, we'll go through and discuss so many things. But then on moonlighting, this is my favorite emerging hot topic, and I feel when we as organizations go and support customers in a shared delivery model and do 0.25 FT, 0.5 FT, so on and so forth for customers, and we are extremely cribby about employee moonlighting. So to me, I think that's radical change, because not to brag, but 4 or 5 years, I was really advocating for exit interviews to be done by bots. And then I had super headwind, but I'm seeing these days we have so many automated AI tools that do exit interviews. So I like to see trends a little ahead of time. Call it hunch, whatever. So nice to be here and hearing views from everybody.
So much, Sriram, and we'll definitely hear your bot story in some of the other conversations that we'll have later today. Swati, would you like to go next?
Good morning to everybody. I'm Swati. I lead talent acquisition for Lowe's. Lowe's, sometimes people don't immediately recognize the organization. So it's a US-based Fortune 500 home improvement organization. And we have a shared service team that is based out of Bangalore. So I lead talent acquisition for that center. Prior to this, I was with Myntra and leading the same function. And before that, had a long tenure at an executive search firm, Econ Center. So come from a search experience, and that's how I landed up with talent acquisition. Yeah, super excited to be part of this group today. And I think two things that resonate with me, and at least things that I've observed change from a mindset perspective, is a constant need and desire to innovate, because what's worked in the past obviously doesn't work anymore. So constant innovation, and I think pivoting a little towards your strategy in terms of build versus buy, because buy obviously is not the only viable strategy these days, given the war for talent. So how can you build talent internally? So those are two things I think in the last 2 years I've seen a change from a mindset perspective. But yeah, looking forward to hearing and learning a lot more from you guys.
Thank you, Swati. We're also looking forward to hear your stories from Lowe's and your previous experiences. Joydeep, would you like to go next?
Yeah, thank you, Neeraja. Myself, Joydeep, been in this business for last 25 years. You know, my take is very different. My take is we are all here to drive profitable growth and competitive advantage for the organization. Talent is the downstream impact for the same, right? And I think why we are in this where we are, because globally, if you look at it, how pandemic has transformed the people choices, and it has transformed the people preferences with respect to their priorities, lifestyle. We are observing the same in respect how they are actually behaving, right? And I think all of us today, what we're actually discussing is that organizations which are actually competing, or it's the talent supply chain which is competing against each other, because we all fish from the same pond. If you're fishing from the same pond, the whole transformation is happening from, is it opportunities chasing the talent, or the talents are chasing the opportunities? Now, why organizations are struggling? Because till 2 years back, we were all still in our corporate offices seeking the talent will come and knock your door. But here comes a shift where it is we as an organization, we are chasing talent. And the whole fight is for predictable supply of talent. Today we are struggling. We are struggling because how do we fulfill the forecast of say 2023-24? Struggle is there. So struggle is there that if the demand is that we have to drive that profitable growth, one, if we have to give a competitive advantage to our business, do I have the complete sketch in front of me that this is where I will be in 2024, this is where we'll be in 2025, this is where we'll be in 26. So I personally believe that's a huge shift in the mindset also happened in respect to all the corporate, the way we used to look at talent, the way we used to look at talent forecast, the way we used to look at skill forecast, the way we used to look at skill bundling. And Neeraja, you talked about, Avinash, you talked about the whole university, right? It is also about academy hiring model. Whole academy hiring model that it is not, I'm telling you, I can predict it today that 2 to 3 years down the line, campus will be fast. Because the spiraling compensation game and the campus, none of us will be able to actually compete until and unless we tailor-made the people that we actually look forward to. Whether it is emerging technology, whether it is payments, whether it is DevOps, whether it is cyber. You have to tell that this is the set of talent we look forward. I will curate the talent 3 years down the line. And that's the predictable supply chain I'm actually talking about. And in my role, talent acquisition is a part of it. It is the branding. Largely, I deal with the larger conundrum of, as I said, my pet line, am I driving competitive advantage for the organization? And I think that is the largest piece to develop and see to it that the colleges which is propelling so many tech MBAs, technologies, and everybody, are they ready to be deployed and utilized from the day one, right? And this is where the challenge is. I stop here and look forward to other discussions. Yeah.
So much, Jaideep. Yes, you kind of, spoke about the need for industry to collaborate with academia, and that was my role a couple of years back when I was at the National Education Society of Karnataka. So something which is hugely required. Ravi, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure, definitely. So once again, good morning, everybody. It's a benevolent pleasure to be a part of such an august assembly. And what better times than when we are embracing the new normal, or probably we have been saying for a long time, but every time we're looking and sort of coming to terms with what is really the normal. So yeah, I come with 18 plus years of experience in L&D, OD, and HR space. However, I also wanted to be a part of the mainstream dollar value. So I worked as a delivery manager for various accounts in Wipro. I worked with Wipro for a good 7 years, taking care of some BFSI and media telecom and other CHRD talent engagement functions as well. Of late, I have been a global head for learning and development and organization development, where the span is from EU to US and Asia Pacific. Simply because we look at, when you work in conglomerates, you have to have a big bang approach. You have to be global, but also with the local nuances. So I worked with Arrow Electronics before this, right now with Pactera Edge, just on the verge of moving out. And Infosys, some projects for various in tech process and other BFSI sectors, and of course emphasis in those very early days. I've been a voiceover artist as well, been a behavioral trainer, and neuroscience is my favorite topic apart from cosmology and cosmogony and astronomy. I've been a part of the University Astronomy Astrophysics amateur clubs, as well as the Sky Watchers Association of Pune. So I think I wouldn't really monopolize much of the airtime, but what I would like to say in the preamble is that while we were saying disruption as a buzzword before 2019, nature actually did it for us to make us understand what really disruption is in the form of COVID. It was kind of a rude awakening. The whole world, sort of pressed the reset button, and we went into a different behavioral patterns. They say neuroplasticity, that every year or every particular month on month, your brain is kind of liquid, right? So it changes and you are totally a different person. You're probably more different in every cell form than your computer or your cell phone that you're holding right now. You are a new version of yourself. So we are actually the post-COVID model of our own selves compared to our gadgets and our objects that we look at home. So it's like it takes about 21 to 60 days to form a new habit, and the whole world has gone through a new habit. And so coming back to recruitment, I think it's the most fundamental on which the edifice is built. If that is ignored, the whole thing is going to be like a house of cards. You can call it as a Pareto analysis. You can call it like an iceberg effect, that you get to see problems later on, but somewhere the original sin has been committed, right from the job descriptions not being correct, to mismatch of hiring, to proper emotional quotient or the perception levels not being done. Synergy, every dot has to be connected. And with great minds like this, who have roughed the weather post pandemic in these 2 years, I'm sure everybody has got wealth of experience and exposure to sort of opine about it, and we can try to enrich each other from this. So I will wait for the actual points when we can discuss. But thank you so much, and pleasure to be a part of this assembly.
Thank you so much, Ravi, and I love the introduction, which is so holistic. And I think that's another aspect that we may want to talk about, to say that, do we look at a candidate only from the tech aspect or the domain aspect that we are hiring, or do we really look at candidates today in a very holistic view to see what they bring to the table, and hence they can enhance the value proposition? Thank you, Ravi. Ruhi, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Neeraja. Hi, everyone. I'm sure it's a great privilege for everyone, but equally for me as well, to be talking about the hottest topic, I would say, for a decade now, I'm sure, but it kind of accelerated in last 2-3 years. I basically lead talent acquisition at Unilever, and my experiences are very diverse. So I've worked with investment banks, I've worked with IT, I've worked with consulting services, and now I'm working with a consumer goods company. So the way we look at talent has been very, very different from all the experiences that I've had. But I think the last 2 years, I saw it as an opportunity to kind of raise the bar on how we recruit, because as someone was saying that, we've been just trying to adjust our strategy, but ultimately things haven't really changed. Talent acquisition continues to be a BAU service delivery function in most of the organizations. And then we took a pause and we said that, hey, you know what, I think it's time to basically do a big reset. And I'd like to talk about a couple of things later, but we're working on a principle which says that our recruitment needs to be 100% proactive. Otherwise, we are always at the receiving end. We are always struggling to get talent on board, be it campus, be it trained talent, or be it mid-career recruits, etc. And coupled with a very, very strong succession plan for the key positions that we have in the organization. So a lot of experiments have happened in the last 2 years, and there are clearly some wins that we see in terms of build versus buy. So there's more clearer narrative on the kind of skills that we could buy and build. We started looking at a gig sort of ecosystem, which has really helped us hire specialized skills, which we otherwise we wouldn't have hired if given an option of an FTE. So I'm also looking at, or rather observing, that there are new employment models have come up, rather than just offering that, hey, you know what, you can only hire a 0.5 FTE, or you can only hire a FTE. So that fungibility has started coming in, and I'm really loving the space, because I don't think if COVID wouldn't have happened, I don't think this great reshuffle or the reset on processes, the way we perceive the talent acquisition function, would have happened. So more to talk, but I'm glad that I'm here and sharing my views. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruhi. We will go with Vinay next.
Hi, thank you. Good morning. Thank you very much for having me here. So I think this group is so rich in experience. And a lot has been already said. So I don't know the risk of repetition. I'll probably make few points. So you want an introduction as well, so I'll quickly do that. So I work with Tech Mahindra as head of the business HR function. So I have had some major career lateral moves. So starting with manufacturing, then moved to IT industry in the quality assurance function. So the CMMI, capability maturity model, etc. They were popular. Did consulting for the software methodology transformation programs, etc. Moved to Bank of America, captive, led the quality there. And for last 9 years, I'm doing HR leadership role in Tech Mahindra. So from manufacturing to software quality to HR. A couple of quick points you have to make. So first thing is the skill-based hiring, at least in IT service industry. I foresee that trend really catching up. The second thing in terms of skill also, we are seeing that there's, and people are basically saying that there could be more shift toward deep tech. So which means that basically doing a quick course on software development, Salesforce.com, etc. Some initial skills can provide some short-term success, but as I think we're getting deeper into technology and no code, low code kind of products are coming into the market. So the deep tech people who really understand technology fundamentally, so that's going to probably pick up more currency. The second point is, I think Joydeep talked about that, but to slightly elaborate more, that the EVP, employee value proposition upfront for each individual, right? If you can, so at the hiring itself upfront, we can say, we can probably have mutual understanding of what company is looking for, what candidate is looking for. So apart from compensation, of course, that's a main meeting point. But apart from that, what kind of career journey the candidate is looking at, and what kind of work-life balance they're looking at, what flexibility they're looking at, etc. So that probably need to come, that need to be fast forwarded, and even at the time of acquisition, that should happen. Currently, that's we're not able to do that to a great extent. The second thing is basically the life cycle of technology itself is shortening. So some psychometric or any other way of knowing what is the learnability of the candidate would be very important assessment point. Academia and industry collaboration, basically. So one thing I've really seen that at least in India last 2-3 years, whatever the problems exist, somebody is working on that. So startup ecosystem has really brought that. So good news is that every problem is work in progress now. It's not that. So, this is skill employability thing also is being addressed. For example, in Telangana government, they have put up a task force. At a national level, there's a skill ministry, and the whole team is really put up. So, so that skill gap, I foresee that next 2-3 years, basically, there'll be good progress by the virtue of really industry coming up and saying that this is a program we want you to run for 30-year student, etc. And also industry offering a lot of internships so that students get an option to apply the knowledge they have picked up. And the last point is that in terms of build and buy, which Ruhi talked about. So there is basically from talent strategy level, we have to basically, the talent acquisition team and the learning and development team have to work closely to see what to buy, what to build internally. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you, Vinay, and we look forward to hearing more on each of these points as the conversation progresses. I would request Sujata for a quick intro and her initial thoughts on this topic.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sujata. I head HR at Manhattan Associates. We are a supply chain product company, and our main business here in India, we are a GIC. We have a huge R&D team. So our biggest challenge has really been on how do I build the next generation organization here. Our entire transformation to cloud has been a huge, an interesting journey. And if I'm moving from a traditional R&D organization to a very service-based organization has been a very interesting journey. And as Jyotik was saying, how do I look at talent, which is ready and deployable? How do we look at, how do I get talent, a supply of talent that is ready for what we're looking for in the next generation. The whole disruption that has happened, have people moved along with that, is what my interest from this session would be. All of you've spoken through, the various challenges, disruptions. It's the same journey that we are going through, and look forward to everyone speaking on this journey, and see if I can pick up some interesting points. And we all, especially in the technology industry, is going through this major change, and we'd love to hear from all of you.
And I would request Ritesh now to introduce and give his top comments on this topic.
Thanks, Neeraja. And good morning again, everyone. My name is Ritesh. I lead the Global Learning and Talent Management Organization in a company called eMIDS. It's an IT/product engineering company, backed by a private equity firm called New Modern Capital, which has more than 200 companies in its portfolio. So I've joined here very recently, about 3 months back. Prior to this, I was with CGI, leading HR for them in the APAC region, and then I've worked with Intel and Genpact before this. I have close to 20 years of experience, primarily in learning and HR. I think if I have to talk about, just quickly summarizing what my thoughts are, I think a lot of people have already covered, the key elements that we will probably talk about. But I think I'll just sort of, reinforce certain key messages. Like one, I think Joydeep spoke about is on, it sounds very intuitive, right? I mean, we need to look at graduates, and they need to be a big part of our hiring strategy. But it also requires a shift in the mindset, especially in projects where people are looking for 100% fit or close to 100% fit, so that the build and buy strategy is going to be crucial, not just from a grad perspective, but also when we are looking at lateral hires. So that's again something that need to be looked at, especially for services company like ours. It becomes all the more challenging because you're working in pods and in an agile environment, and you're working on development projects. There are discretionary spends from a client perspective, and therefore to forecast effectively is a challenge. And I think Ruhi was referring to it before. We would love to hire to a forecast, but given those challenges, how do you anticipate and build talent in advance, and look at grads as a way to bring in, and then understand that there will be a learning curve, but really be patient and okay with that, because that's the only way you'll be able to like again using Joydeep's phrase there, create a competitive advantage for your organization, right? So that's all I had to. Of course, we'll speak more as the discussion moves forward. Back to you, Neeraja.
Ritesh, and last but not the least, Narayan, we would love to have an intro about yourself, your organization, and your top comments on this topic. You're on mute, Narayan.
Yeah, happy to be here. And I'm the odd man out here. I'm a hardcore techie. So 30 years in tech, I still code 5 to 6 hours every day. It's a tonic that I need to continue every day, right? So just to this is my third startup, Bridge Labs, right? And prior to this, I had 2 more startups, and it was bootstrapped. And I learned that through these 2 startups, like Steve Jobs says, the dots are somehow joined. I learned that if somebody is solving employability in a true sense, it is a bootstrap startup, right? In a bootstrap startup, these are kind of unemployable people. That's what they can afford to hire in, right? But for this candidates, right, there is no classroom, no curriculum, no trainer, no trainee kind of an approach, right? These guys come in, right, and they learn on the job. They learn by problem solving, and they are tailor-made, right? Joydeep used the word tailor-made, which is absolutely right. They are tailor-made to what is needed in the shop floor, right? And they are mentored not by trainers, but by real engineers by looking at the code, right? And when I started Bridge Labs, I said, hey, the bootstrap startup is solving it. My two startups did that. Why can't I make that as a problem to be solved for the ecosystem, right? So that's what exactly Bridge Lab is. It started with a core ethos that, how can we give 100% placement to all job seekers, right? And 100% job readiness to all tech companies. So we started in 2015 with this ethos, completely unacademic, because academic process cannot guarantee this. So what we went on to set is everything that is unacademic. There is no courses, they don't enroll into a course, there is no classroom, no curriculum. Trainer trainee, I think, is a curse to the engineering industry, right? Fundamentally, you look at any other field, chartered accountancy has articleship, right? Law has apprenticeship, right? Medicine has residency, right? Only engineering is stuck with training as approach, right? And our belief is that, it really doesn't solve the problem. And tailor making, again, right? The academic processes try to make you jack of all, master of none. But ultimately, the company needs a job-ready engineer who is exactly fitting the role. So we looked at it completely differently, the way to solve this problem, right? So right from the job seeker coming in, right, they don't come in because they want to enroll into a machine learning course or a data engineering or a DevOps. They come in with a pure intent that I need a higher tech talent. I need a higher tech job. And then from there, our prediction engine starts in to see what kind of a job roles they are suitable for. Go and work with tech companies, create a contractual demand, and then match make this job seeker to the particular tech company, and then tailor make to them, based on the problem statements that we have built. And fundamentally believe that, the way to solve the problem is through problem statements, because problem statements, technology can change, but the problem statements never change, right? The problem remains the same, but you're trying to solve it in a better way. And that's how we've been doing it. More than 500 tech companies now work with us. 60 to 80 percent of companies are startups, Series ABC funded. Large tech companies like ThoughtWorks, Capgemini, Emphasis, Oracle, KPMG works with us, and we've been successful in tailor making the talent, and completely believe that we have a huge supply, but still we have an empty pond syndrome, right? Everybody is hungry. The only way to solve is to bridge that employability gap through pure tailor making process. So that's what it is. Happy to be a part of this, and happy to collaborate my views, my understanding, in the tech industry for last 30 years. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Narayan. I love that tailor making, the candidate and the talent for what is required. And I'm wondering whether that would go deeper down in the next few years, where maybe we really don't need a school and a college, but we tailor make the talent from the day they are grown into what is actually required for life and for careers. Thank you. It's already been a very interesting, exciting discussion, and I really look forward to more conversations. I read a headline a few months ago saying the Great Indian Talent War is on. 86% of professionals will look for new jobs in the next 6 months. So Anshula, let me ask you this question. And Joydeep said it so beautifully. He said we are all fishing from the same pond, right? So obviously, yes, we are, competing against one another. While we would love to collaborate, but we are also in some ways competing against one another for the same talent. I also heard some of your interviews in the past where you said that it's employer branding. It is the candidate experience that might actually be, some of the top winning swords in this war, if I may call that. But it doesn't stop companies from poaching candidates, if I can use that word, especially because we know there are these candidates in the notice period. So I think strategies somewhere are that let's go fast. Right. So what I wanted to ask was, is this okay? Is it okay for companies to go on this route to fill their requirements?
Well, I would say yes and a no, Neeraja. I don't think companies need to go and poach. It is, as everybody, I think everybody in the forum said, it is candidates market. 3 years ago, it may be a demand supply issue. It has always been a demand supply issue in the corporate world, but it was not as massive as it is today. And the tables have turned in the last 3 years. And it is not only the doing of pandemic or how the socioeconomic scenarios have changed across the globe. It is also a doing of, I think, how the market was, sort of the corporate world was sort of, bloating. It was coming to a point where you had to plateau. It was coming to a point where things had to change. So it's a natural, I think Ravi said that it's a natural disruption we all were going towards. So I would say if there is talent out there in India, if we poach, we don't poach. If you have compelling proposition, people will come to you. And, people will move from one organization to another organization. And if you have something better to give to them, it's absolutely fine if you're trying to, sort of do a better fitment for a person, which is a win-win, for the candidate and for the corporate. So when it looks like, that we are taking each other's talent, but we are also giving platforms to people to do what suits them best, what compensation they should be getting, what career paths they should be getting. And I think somewhere there has to be a sense of abundance. If someone can do a job for me better, I'm sure from wherever he's coming from, the backfill will have a better suited opportunity for that person. So I think it's just best jobs for best people. And the market has enough and more right now. We are totally ignoring the talent coming from the B towns. The 30-35% of the workforce today comes from the B towns. They are the underdogs, I would say. But if you work with them, they are absolutely there with a little bit of hand holding, and they are more hardworking, more sincere, and more diligent in terms of, because they want to prove themselves. So I think it's just that sort of mindset that can keep us going in today's market, poaching or no poaching.
Thank you so much, Anshula. So I would just want Vinay to kind of add on to that, to say whether it is different in a manufacturing setup, because, Anshula might bring in the perspective from a consulting kind of an organization. Is it different? Is it same? What are your views on, the competition for talent and kind of fishing from the same pond?
Yeah, so I think basically, poaching is not the right practice. However, we need to bring transparency in terms of what exactly we're looking for, and people can, of course, reach out. So in terms of poaching, there have been examples where we clearly said that you have just worked in the current organization for 6 months. We would discourage you to make a change at this point in time. So such, I think, I would say, some such norms, if we can self-embrace, that would really go a long way in terms of messaging candidates. The second thing is, I would say, as the focus on really skill goes up, and also to the hypothesis which I mentioned is that every problem is getting attention, such is a vibrant scenario in the Indian industry. So from a skill perspective also, even kids basically, this undergrads doing BTechs in various institutions, so whether it is in the curriculum or not, they know what are the hot skills, cybersecurity, etc., blockchain, metaverse. So they are picking up the skills on their own and coming to the market much better prepared. So I would say, so the skill gap also should reduce, and hopefully would have a much better equilibrium in terms of demand and supply. But I would, my direct answer to your question would be that all of us as HR professionals should also promote where the candidates are, doing window shopping, sometime, switching over very, very soon. So those things, I think, basically do that. And the last point is that I would say there are a lot of fraud candidates happening, and all kind of frauds. I don't know whether you got a chance to look at, there was an article 2-3 days back in Times of India, all editions. So majority of inputs by request for anonymity, but most of the inputs had come from me in that article. So we, as an industry, we need to probably take some actions to discourage that behavior. And the startup ecosystem, I'm aware of 4 or 5 startups who are working on basically improving the robustness of the background verification check. Many of them are using blockchain as a technology. So this fake candidature is for the biggest menace. We need to address that. And there have been basically very long-established financial organization in terms of maintaining the rating of people, etc. A similar thing has to come with IT professional.
Neeraja, can I come in?
Please do, please do.
My 2 cents to this is that, we really need to look at how can we increase the employability pool. Unlike the West, right, where there is only 2% unemployment among STEM graduates, India has 80% unemployment among STEM graduates, right? And according to NASSCOM itself, out of 5 million engineers we have, only 30% are digitally tech ready, 70% are not. Rather than focusing on that 30% who are digitally tech ready, or focusing, startup says that only 0.5% of fresh engineers are employable, the service industry says 20% are employable, right? Focusing on that pool rather than, how do we look at it a larger pool, and, in Bridge Labs, we work with Economic Times, a campus staff program, reached out to around, 3,000 engineering colleges for last 5 years and 100,000 kids. And we did a Bridge Labs tech quotient test with them. And we found that 45% are tech employable. They are not ready, but they are tech employable. But somehow we try to overlook and try to look at those who are employably ready, right? I personally believe the way to go towards is to increase the employability pool. So then all the challenges get handled.
Yeah.
Right. That's 2 cents from my side.
Yeah. So Neeraja, I'll come out here. And I think all of us are here. And I think, let me tell you, the emphasis on the term talent, right? Now, whom we are calling talent? I think we have drawn the line between a talent and a mercenary, right? We have created this. All of us collectively has created it. And how we created it? In LinkedIn, after US, which has 2.18 million subscribers, second biggest is India, 88, right? And when all the 88 profiles carry that open for relook job, right? We have fallen for it, right? And coming back to your Narayan, your point, the point is about backward integration, right? The point is about why are we falling prey to the spiraling compensation game which we cannot sustain. Absolutely. It is not about employee experience or candidate experience. It is also about business experience. Right. Business is saying yes to this because so-called business enabler function, they say, sorry, I don't have any solutions for you. Now, when your cost of the payroll cost is actually under pressure over a period of time, your candidate's experience suffers because beyond a point, your recovery per hour suffers, right? Look what is happening in Cognizant. Look what is happening to performance pay. Look what is happening in Wipro today, because they thought that 2 years post-pandemic, they can sustain a particular level of compensation. Now they are not able to actually do it. Now, whose candidate experience is actually suffering? Now, these people will be coming back to the market. Now, what I'm actually trying to say is that this whole ability of creating the demand, forecast, growth, and the planning. Are we looking through the people lens to the revenue? Till now, we are looking at through the revenue function and looking at the people. And that's where the suffering. Revenue is actually an outcome, right? And all of us, we are not HR, we are actually business. In the business, in the process, we are actually doing HR. And this responsibility of us to design it well, that my backward integration, my supply, my demand, my skill are commensurate to the budgeted growth that actually is being planned. Today, the fallacy lies in the budgeted growth. Actually, if you ask yourself, all your team, are you hiring for budget or are you hiring for forecast? The answer is actually no, none of us actually know. This is a crisis, right? And nobody is actually talking about leakage because all of us are doing in the meeting, you are talent exchange, you are doing this. Nobody is actually driving it to stop the leakage. Arey bhai, ye kahin to ja raha hai, chhod ke. I was looking at a report, if all of you know the Talent Insight. The Talent Insight also says people change their company, this company to this company. Now you all need to look at it. Why suddenly, if 88 million LinkedIn people are changing their brand from say PwC to the Bridge Lab to Lowe's to Unilever, right? Why exactly it is happening? And I think larger discussion, Neeraja, is also need to coming across you because you are driving it. What is equity? What is inclusion? What is letting us to believe that suddenly people think that I have got 35%, right? Anshula is here. Anshula is ठीक है. PwC is giving you 30%. Here is 40%, right? Now the fact remains, it is going to end today and tomorrow somewhere. But the fact remains, how long? Till all those corporates reach a particular level, like the dot-com boom, write it down, we are in 22, 23, 24, this boom will also actually reverse, right? And beyond a point, this ability, whoever made their money is fine, whoever reverse it will actually also reverse it. So the fact remains, career, value propositions, values, right? That need to come, and it has to come back. And this collective responsibility of all of us that drive business experience, drive people experience, because this tenure, because in PwC we are celebrating our 150 years of existence this year. Now, if you are 150 years, right? Now the issue is the average tenure in PwC is 20 years of each of the individual. Can you think of it? Now, when you tell this story to a millennial or a centennials, right, that what is your concept of career? And I think we all need to tell you that wealth creation is a function. It's when you stay invested, right? And I think that's where the larger pieces comes. And I like, Narayanan, that you had actually talked about, and that this is where the whole thing is all about. That, okay, talent is there, but whom you are calling a talent, each organization has to actually decide, are you getting exploited by the talent? It is in our own interest we are going to the tier 2, tier 3 cities because we are saying that it has become unviable in the tier 1 cities. We are selfish, right? Tomorrow, tier 2, tier 3 will come parallel with the tier 1 also. Then actually we have to see to it that how exactly we are doing. And I think that's where employee experience, the leadership is also about the welfare state, the whole one, right? And this is where if you corporate back to a public sector organizations or otherwise organizations, why do you think people are sticking out there? It is not about risk averse. It is also about probably I'm missing something or the inspirational dissatisfaction which is leading me to leave. And I think the people manager capability is, we have forgotten the way we have looked through the revenue lens so much. We are chasing revenue so much that we have forgotten to create good people managers who will give actually stickiness to the people, that you continue, you have your career out here. Yeah.
Thank you, Jaideep. Thank you so much. Ruhi, did you have a point? I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, just a quick one. I think it's a very, very interesting topic. And I come from a very different lens on this, that ideally poaching is something that is not the moral high ground, right? Back in the day, we as an organization, we never used to even engage with candidates having multiple offers, or if they are asking for something which is really outrageously unacceptable. And then there was a time when noticeperiod.com came and started to brand every candidate as a product, that, hey, you know what, 20 days in my notice period now, I can join in 10 days and I can, probably be available for 70 lakhs. So that sort of really, I would say, exploited the candidate side of things. And of course, companies got swayed by it because you were able to get people in 2 days, 3 days time. But I think the bigger picture, the bigger point here is that we are still very, very reactive to the demand, to the business ask. And I think we always get, sort of swayed by that wave that I'm losing business or I'm losing revenue and I need the individual tomorrow. Ideally, if you ask me, all the HR professionals should have like a pact saying that, hey, you know what, if there are candidates, we basically need to have some guidelines, because today the way we are poaching people from each other is actually the candidate is the person who's taking an advantage of it. And we've actually forgotten what values are really important being in an HR community. And we can blame the whole world about it. But I think that's the main point, that how we can come together to say that we're not going to get exploited and we'll basically make a fair offer to a candidate. Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, I think that's a very valid point. We keep saying it's a candidates market, but yeah, do we also kind of do something to ensure that we also kind of have our stakes, our values in there so that the candidate also thinks a little. I want to kind of extend this conversation with Sriram because I did read that Atos wanted to hire about 15,000 people last year, and I'm sure, you know, the hiring demand in your organization continues in that space. While we've spoken a lot about poaching and it's right or wrong, my question here is the inflated remuneration ask that is coming from candidates. Do you believe that it is because of this, or is it real in terms of the skills that they bring to the table, the value that they bring to the table?
I'd like to respond by extending what Ruhi was saying, because she started, it was very heartfelt on what we really feel on the ground rather than in the boardrooms, because that's a real problem the HR teams or the recruitment teams are facing. While we are trying to impact revenue generation, order entry, book to bill, all of that stuff, but what she said was so heartfelt. I echo that, Ruhi. And I would like to extend by saying that in this entire push for more compensation remuneration, I think the revenue generating roles are really commanding the premium. And the revenue generating roles could be people in sales, people who are doing customer success, working on customer success, working on niche technology areas, and so on and so forth. And to keep their top line up there and still sometimes compromising bottom line, I think this might just continue for the next year or two, because there is still a whole lot of consolidation happening. Well, that said, I think we are generalizing the situation by calling it a gap between demand and supply. It is not a shortage of people, but it is a lack of talent that we are chasing between right skills and what the customer demands, right? So there is people available, but are the right people available who is going to meet your need is the question. And therefore, I think we are in this whirlpool of trying to get to the people and through skilling programs, so on and so forth. What we did, and this is real life for us last 3-4 years, within our organization, we set up what is called our TRI, the Technology Relevance Index. We compartmentalized into invest, core, and relearn. Core is something that's a day-to-day ongoing skill that somebody needs. Invest is aspirational, and relearn is sunsetting. If you have let's say a manual testing for ease of example, I say in the next 3 months you're obsolete, please pick up either core or invest. So over the last 3 or 4 years, we've been going through that real change in moving people from sunsetting to core or core to invest. So essentially, everybody in the organization are picking up 2 skills. One is the current skill. Number 2 is the aspirational skill. And our TRI is basically made up of 3 components. One, what is your current delivery mix? What do you need as skill for delivering current set of engagements? What is coming to you in the next 30, 60, 90 days? How does your order look? And what's the emerging skill trend in the market? So to kind of try to keep head above water, I would say, and not even to beat it, is because we are all still running behind what our customer need and what the next project is going to demand. And that's the reason we are trying to pay premium and get the kind of people that we are. So while we try to solve this problem, I think this is our attempt to say, how do we make a 2x workforce? If we are, in my erstwhile Central parlance, if we were 25,000 people, how do I have a 50,000 skill capacity to be able to meet my demand of today and be ready for tomorrow? It was not easy. It's like getting to the other side of Himalayas, but we're still getting there, right? So, but I think it's a very genuine attempt, and of course, some people don't like it, some do, but then who do are seeing the benefits of what's going on. So that would be my response to our situation.
Thank you, Srinath. It is interesting, and we need to go there. I remember in the good old days when I was growing up, if you asked for any kind of a learning intervention with the organization that you were working for, it would be evaluated against, are you working on a project that needs that skill? Or is this organization going to get that? No, I don't think you need to. You'll be happy. That's what it would be. But yes, the situation is drastically different today. Sujata, let me narrate a little bit of story about Manhattan Associates and then ask you the questions, because I worked at Manhattan many years ago. And I actually did what we're talking about, the candidates here. So I had got this brilliant offer from Manhattan, my junior, of course, 1996 I'm talking about. And then, of course, I got a call from another organization, interviewed there, and I told them about my offer, and they kind of gave 20% more. Now, I went back to Manhattan and I spoke to the managing director there, and I said, here is an offer, and would you be able to kind of match it? Now, he called me to the office and he sat me down and he said, of course, I can match it if you want to. But in 6 months' time, there would be a performance review, and I'm sure you will do extremely well. And I won't be able to give you that kind of a, salary increase, because I'm going to, bring you on at a very high level, and you will be unhappy, I will be unhappy. So either I give you now, and then performance review time, you don't get much, or you come on board, at this, and I will guarantee that, you will do exceptionally well, and the review will be fantastic. And I accepted it, and I went in, and he was true to his words. I performed well, and 6 months down the line, it was a fantastic review. My question here is that, are candidates today even looking at that long-term view, or are they really looking at instant gratification? And is that why we are having this problem of, I ask, I demand, you better give me? I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that, Sujata.
So, Neeraja, I think that yeah, absolutely, candidates are not waiting for for that situation in which they can perform and show their potential, and then wait for gratification later, and they're all looking for instant gratification. For example, at Manhattan, our attrition is the highest at the software engineer and senior software engineer level. And we constantly think that how could we do better to retain them, right? And these are really, experienced engineers between 1 to 5. So our highest attrition is there, and they're constantly looking for more money, instant gratification. They're not looking at developing skills, knowledge, and potential, or looking at an organization long term. And we need to understand why. I mean, why is that happening, right? I mean, and how could we change that? How is the attitude of our youngsters changing in an environment like this, in a atmosphere like this? And they're all moving. And in fact, when we're looking at hiring people from the market too, at an experience level of 1 to 5, they're asking for 3 times more, right? So, and we're shocked. And, I don't even know how and where to begin. So there's definitely a huge concern in this experience level of candidates, employees that we have, both internally, externally, where there's huge fluidity in terms of what they're looking for, and how they perceive their careers, and then how the monetary gain kind of surpasses and is the most critical thing. So it'd be interesting to know what could we do different. And like, for example, we're trying a whole lot of things: engagement, frontline manager competency building, skills building, and competency building, management development programs, and looking at different ways of how to look at the Gen Y, how could we make it more innovative, how do we encourage more innovation and thought process, get them to be more excited about what they do, get them connected to the the jobs they work on, the products that we build. But attrition still remains the highest at that grade. We see this both internally and externally.
Neeraja, can I come in here?
Yes, please,
Yes.
Narayan.
So actually, it's the conversation we have with a lot of companies. Several lines that Sujata was pointing out, right? Being in tech, right? I've been for 30 years and being architect out there. We know this and it's a global problem. It's not India problem alone. We look at US also, right? The young engineers do switch because they are partly mobile. There is no reason why they need to be there, right? It's not India problem alone, right? But the good thing India has is that it has 1 million engineers who are sitting out there who can be built up. I personally believe if we have a way to create a very large pool, I think really these people don't need to be demanding. They are not as critical to the organization as more than 3 or 4 year, 5 year experience are, because they know the domain far better than anybody else. Technology is a bottom line commodity, right? Yeah, so just bringing tech skills without domain really doesn't matter. So we really need to be having a large heart and say, if you want to really experience, go out and experience. We are not going to retain you because we are going to create more pool. Right, that's the only way I've realized it to solve this problem.
I think just one thing to add to, so Narayan, I think both the things have to be complementing, I personally believe. Of course, we need to create a pool, backup, bench, whatever we want to call it in today's world, and we should protect ourselves. But there are a lot of other things also that people have started doing. So flexibility, for example, Gen Z loves flexibility. As much as they love money, all the technology people are commanding 120 plus sort of a hike, 120% hike they are getting in the markets. It's amazingly different. You need to have compelling roles for them. You have to have mobility opportunities for them across border experiences. You need to have shorter career paths because the patience level is just so less. And then they also want to see the empathy quotient of the organization, the well-being programs, the DEI initiatives. So the organization should need to have a heart and deep pockets. So that's the sort of expectation that the youngsters have to stick around. And yet, obviously, they will not stick around for like us for 10 years or something. Their span will be anywhere between the 3 to 5 years, but they just go much beyond money and roles. They need all of it and more.
I agree. I told Ruhi, just take the gig work, right? I think 0.5 FP. These are the things organization need to innovate, right? Rather than saying that I want that 100% of you here, right? So I agree that there are we need to find a way to keep the young talent intact.
And I think if I can just add on something, I think we spoke earlier about the EVP, right? And just understanding the value proposition and even the drivers, because it varies significantly basis the age group or age profile. And I think over the last 1.5 years, we've clearly seen that while compensation is a key driver, I think what Anshula was saying, right? Well-being, flexibility, all of those have become significantly important drivers alongside compensation. So I think how can you create a package and really try and understand the key drivers for the workforce that you're dealing with and be able to provide opportunities for them to maybe benefit from some of those.
Thank you, Swati. Ruhi and Joydeep have their hands up. So Ruhi first and then Joydeep.
Yeah, sure. So I just wanted to share a couple of things that we are doing, and we've been, I would say, quite successful in retaining talent, be it millennials, be it Gen Z, or be it even, the earlier talents that we had. One of the things that we often talk about flexibility. We talk about that this generation wants a lot of choices. They want shorter career paths and they want recognition. They want to work with global talent across teams. They want to work with many things at the same time, right? They basically thrive in that environment. So what couple of things that we do, the foremost is that every organization has a talent agenda where they want to upskill. They have certain skills that they would want their workforce to really be adept with. But what we did in Unilever was we gave that choice to the employees. We created an ecosystem where across the organization, we put up projects and projects, be it even that if you require like 4 hours a week capacity of anyone, let's say on a project management skill, we kind of created an online ecosystem where we worked with businesses to make sure that they put up their priority projects on it with a clear impact and with a clear call out on what is it that you need from a capacity standpoint. Now, this helped us at a time when we were, as a company, we were looking at our operating model. We were actually at a freeze. This is the first year of COVID. Now we were not ready to hire from the market, and we were, and things had to be done, right? Work had to be done. So this particular ecosystem really helped, and the choice was with the employees, right? They could either learn a new skill by raising their hand and giving that capacity, or if they've learned a new skill, they could actually do practical projects with global organizations. So this was not restricted to one geography, or you could actually work in a project in US, Europe, anywhere actually, or likewise. And that was a hit. Of course, we had to do a lot of work in change management, get people, there was a lot of advocacy work that was done. But you won't believe, in a year, just in India, we were able to unlock about 100,000 hours without even spending a dime. And the business could get the skills and the work done in COVID when we were not expected to hire from the outside, right? Now, after the COVID phase got over and we've accepted the fact that COVID has passed it, we are actually leveraging Flex further. It's called Flex Marketplace here. We are further using it to reskill, upskill people, and also redeploy, right? Now, again, it doesn't come with a force, or it doesn't come with a direction that, hey, you know what, e-commerce, or there are 3 skills as an organization we want to build, and you better do the trainings. Because that kind of a communication doesn't really go well with the Gen Z or the millennials, right? And then it becomes another track and chase project. So we are seeing that if you give the power and a choice to the employee, and you give them many options to really work on their career, it is working for us. We also launched a program called You Work, which gives full-time employees to rethink on whether they want to continue working with us as a full-time, or they want to work with us on a reduced hour framework. This is very similar to gig for external, but we have actually sort of launched that for internal employees as well. And we've seen that some of the key talents that we've never wanted to lose, they have stuck around. And it's actually a very curated way to retain people, because everybody has different ideas of living their life during COVID. After COVID, they've rediscovered themselves. So these are some of the things that we are keeping the candidate and the employee in the center while thinking of solutions. And it is working well for us.
Thank you, Juhi. I did, go through the U-turn, is it? Did you say? Yeah,
it's called You Work.
You Work.
Internal employees, yes, and Open to You, which is for external employees in Canada.
Thank you. Joydeep, yes, please.
Yeah, exactly on the very similar line. The problem statements comes across is where is the locus of control? Is the locus of control is with the employee? employee, nobody likes that if the locus of control lies somewhere else, right? The whole issue, people talk about flexibility, people talk about radical flexibility, people talk about well-being and everything, but nowhere we felt that locus of control or he or she is in command. It is either the supervisor in command and the people manager is in command. And I think this is where the largest challenge is, how we building the ecosystem, right? One is the example I'm actually giving, when we have to push hugely to shift this mindset. Today in PwC, anybody who has completed 2.5 years can apply for any open roles, no question asked. So many times people look for an outside because they want a change of role. And the locus of control, their supervisor, their people manager, those stringent policy that you have to seek that whether I want to go within the similar organization. And today, once you have this open flexibility that if you have proven yourself, no talent segmentation, if you have spent across, please go and apply, right? If you are selected, you are there. So many times we have created this false barrier that you have to seek. Navigating the organization itself became so difficult for an individual. And when they fail to navigate, they thought it is much easier to knock the door outside than the knocking the door inside. That's one example. Second, we have talked about liquid workforce. We have talked about gig. Again, in Indian context, right, in a societal context, if you look at it, everybody looks for a permanent workplace, right? In a contractual, flexible, this is yet to catch up in a gig phenomena, right, in US and all. Now, it is also has to be seen, the burden of proof lies on the organizations that what kind of ecosystem for the liquid workforce we are actually creating. And I think this has to be publicized. We're also trying it in a various way. That's the second piece. We're smaller ways, we're very much successful. And the third, allowing people to indulge in their passion and activity apart from their core. And this is the biggest shift, right? Whether they are YouTubing, whether it is part-time trainer, whether it was gig, whether it is TEDx speaker. Earlier, conventional organization as an organization were very rigid. We're saying that, okay, your service conditions doesn't allows you, right? How can we have a secondary source of income, right? Now, I think people have accepted this as fact. People are saying so that everybody has a reason to live and enjoy their life. If you look at this other economies, like in a media or in a movie, why they like it? Because they think it's my passion. But in a corporate, there has to be also a passion which is rewarding, but allow them to do so. So for what? If they're actually somebody is ready to pay them, right? And I think this is also a huge mindset. And thanks to that, this whole liquid workforce and the gig economy, and this is going to stay. This is going to change very soon, maybe by the next decade. People will say, okay, I'll 50% I'll be in corporate, 50% I choose to be a YouTuber, 50% I choose to be I choose to be a trainer, I choose to be a coach, I choose to be a yoga teacher. And I think this is where we have to influence internally that this is not a crime, right? That I have to stick to give them back the locus of control. The fight is actually on this locus of control, that I am not enslaved. If I have signed you for an organization, I am here because I like to do it. And this is the
yeah, sure. Thank you, Jaideep. Narayan, I'll just ask you to wait for a couple of minutes because I thought that I must bring in Ravi here because from his introduction itself, I realize he kind of brings himself across as such a holistic person. Definitely would like to hear his views around this conversation of allowing the person to be their whole and being in the organization and allowing them, of course, as long as there's no conflict of interest, we kind of keep all of that, but allowing them to pursue their other passions within and outside the organization. So be it a gig, be it some other kind of a framework that organizations can build in, which will definitely retain talent and allow them to grow, and hence you don't have that war for talent outside. Ravi, your thoughts on this, and especially with the freshers piece. I'm very, very keen to understand how is it going down with freshers, because of course, I think across, whether it's a fresher or it's a 40-year-old today, I think it's become the candidate feels right just to kind of ask for what they want and they don't shy away. But I think with the freshers, whether we call them millennials or what, there is that bit. I know that because my daughter is currently in final year, and all these companies go to placement and do placement talks, and they come back and say, I didn't like that organization. And I said, wow, I mean, what did they say? And they said all the things that I would have craved for, I think, but she said, I didn't like it. So yeah, Ravi.
Sure. So I think great, insightful things opined by everybody, and there is a fear of being repetitive, but I still, if you reflect back, some of the quick points that I would love to make is, I think fundamentally, if you look at from a human conscious level, right? I mean, or consciousness that we talk about, is any relationship, whether it's your relationship with your country, whether a relationship with your partner or your friends or organization, it depends fundamentally and brutally on one concept, that is, what do I get out of it? The minute you don't get what you want in any association, you leave it. So if it's monetary, if the recruitment has taken place on a very shaky rudimentary level, where the basics or the fundamentals of getting a particular talent is not being sorted out, in the sense that you know very well that a comparative analysis tells you that you have hired the person at a much lesser price, or there's a huge deficit, obviously it's a flight risk. So the original sin happens at that level. It also happens at job descriptions, whether you are really looking at what your existing landscape of the organization is, or evolutionary technologies, particularly we're talking about Web 3.0, metaverse, and so on and so forth. So first, the basics are very important. I mean, we're talking about gig economy. I had written a blog almost 2 years ago that I myself was a consultant, a freelancer, used to do executive coaching. We had Gallup and Clifton Strength associations. We looked at long-term engagement programs and so on and so forth. So yeah, people, I mean, there's a mention that by 2025, people will spend about 2 hours in the metaverse. People will make money in the non-fungible token environment, and in metaverse, they're buying properties. There'll be some coaching. There's going to be a crazy world. Hologram. There was the latest. We're talking about teleportation, right? So it's the digital and the the manual presence or the physical presence. It's going to be a crazy intertwining of it, and the lines are going to be blurred. So to look at, if your own so you can't have everything painting everything with the same brush. I mean, one man's food can be another man's poison. What works as a modus operandi for one organization can certainly be a self-destructive, detrimental sort of a modus operandi for that other organization. So you need to first understand what are your investors like, what's your scenario like, what's your landscape like. Look at a panoramic view, look at the contingency plans, what is your layer like, how much percentage of gig talent that you would like to have. It's in US, it's saying about 52%. There are millennials we talk about, but there are all perennials as well. I mean, people of all ages and groups, but are willing to do multiple roles, hands-on jobs, no longer a very set prerequisite for that. So initially, the recruitment or spotting of talent, or as you said, freshers, I think there's a huge burden on the government policies or educational sector. I mean, look at what happened 10, 20 years ago. I mean, almost all engineers, whatever they learned, they had to unlearn and go for new certifications, whether it was Citrix or whether it was server or whether it was cloud computing or anything for that matter. So I mean, what were you doing for 4 years? Or somebody who's an engineer gets into MBA and then gets into completely banking role or something of that sort. So all our learning academia has to be very industry relevant. 4.0, or we're looking at the latest technological landscape that is going to happen. The COVID is just one of the nature's way of disrupting things, but technology itself is going, or always has been, very prolific, very transmogrification that is taking place. It's almost like, who would have thought 20 years ago that 80% or 90% of the people are going to spend their time on social media or other immersive or virtual reality kind of things. So similarly, we would not know what people will spend in 2030, the kind of time they're going to spend. So technology itself is a major change, and we have to look at in the areas as to what your organization is going to look forward 5 years, and on that basis you stagger and structure what kind of talent you would want to have. Now, once your fundamentals and basics are sorted out, you've got the right person, you know that it's not a flight risk. Yes, money is always a driving factor, as Gordon Greco of Wall Street says. Greed is good, and eventually you can't stop that. Every person is always going to think. I mean, you just do a poll survey with 90% of the people say, if you tell them that I'll pay you $1 million and can you do this, like just dancing or maybe some kind of acting or something, they suddenly will change their passion of 40 years and say, oh, I'm getting $1 million, I'm going to change it. So it's money is a crude reality. It is the grim reality that it drives people's, it's like a vaccine for all your problems, so to speak. People think that if I have money, I've got the basics sorted out, I've got security been taken place. But we've also looked at oxygen cylinders and masks, and we've looked at life, just, how luxurious it is to even have a cup of tea with your loved ones. So it's not always the virtual number, as they say. Only 3% is physical currency, 97% is just a mental construct. It's a visual thing. You get a salary, it goes into your EMI, then it goes into your investments. So it's just a mental fog that's been created. What's your quality of living? As we always say that, we talk about life, but what is your living? Most people, you get up in the morning, you're like a robotic design, go up and work in the office, come back, you say you got a certain salary, but how much of your salary are you really enjoying for yourself, for your life? So the retention or employee engagement, all these things, when you talk about, we should focus on quality of living as well in the office. Many people said earlier that engagement and trying to create fostering a good environment and all that. Yes, I mean, now that if you've got the right person, now that you're married, now how to keep your marriage going, now that you are a friend, now that you are in this society, you can't afford to be hostile to the society members, even though you may not like. So that's where the second ball game begins. The first one is very important because it's an iceberg effect. I mean, that's where the original seeds are sown. So that lot of permutation, combination, keeping your whole organization's view, your plan. And when I look at, so every employee would have like individual development plan, right? They are nursing a hidden desire that they want something from this organization. There was a survey done that they don't like freebies and laptops or some kind of vacation package or something, but they would love to have their immediate manager at least a week or a fortnight to praise them for the work they've done. Everybody loves, you're not a robot, you're not a head count, you're not an employee code. So people would like, whatever work you do, yes, that's your duty. But if somebody says, hey, that's a great job done, and admires that person in front of the crowd, employees have said that has made me more wanted in the organization rather than the freebies and all those things given to me. So from an L&D perspective, I would say it drives on three things. One is, of course, your bread and butter, your existence, your oxygen, that is your technology and your basic thing what you're working on. So your tech skills for which you've hired the person must be spot on. Number two, a prescriptive measure from L&D and OD side. So L&D, OD, HR, BP, talent engagement are all intertwined now. You no longer have these bifurcations and everybody working in different units. So what are you doing to prescribe? So some managers require effective communication skills or thought leadership, or talking or design thinking, or some people lack empathy, or some people are very good but they don't come across as very good. So all these prescriptive things come from industry experts of L&D of that organization. And the third is internally from the employee himself or herself, as to maybe his or her voice is lost in the wilderness, and suddenly you come to know when the person puts his papers. So is he or she expecting something from the organization apart from the salary, apart from the freebies, apart from the work? That's fine, that's a template. But what about the other things? And so we talked about engagement, or we talked about passion, we talked about just round table, we talked about get-togethers, we talked about giving that additional coaching thing, or higher education programs, or getting them certified for certain things for which is not your recurrent business value, but you're creating a sustainability. Inner mobility is one of the big things, right? You pay 2x or 2.5x to get an X person, but what if you create your own pool of people and make them stay to the organization? Ultimately, like I said, I would end on this note: any relationship with the country, organization, people, society, your stock market, your company portfolio, it depends on what do I get out of it. The minute you don't get, you're bound to leave. That's a reality of life. And so I think many things we can talk about, but I'm sure we should give time to everybody. So I hope I was able to address a few things. Thank you
so much, Ravi. Thank you. It was interesting, and I will let Narayan speak now. I've been holding him for a while, but I'm also curious to know, in the tailor-made that you do at Bridge Labs, Narayan, do you also bring in these elements beyond just the tech skills to kind of look at their mindsets and tell them, as Ravi was saying, that it is beyond just the work and the money? I mean, just curious to know.
Yeah. So just I want to add one point on gig that Bridge Labs believe that trainers cannot solve the problem. It has to be practicing mentors. So if the mentors are full-time involved in helping others, how would they be practicing? So from day one of Bridge Lab, we've been believing in gig, right? Give a way to ensure that they have a guaranteed salary that they get, but they have an option to really go out there and be a practicing mentor, right? So I believe that you need both sides, where you give them option of being a practicing mentor in our world, and another 0.5-0.6% of that time, right, that full time, they are being working for, so that they remain as practicing. And acquire that skill to remain that practicing, right? That's the way we have been solving the problem. Right. I think the way we have learned the tailor-making process is, through the problem solving, we have tried to see how engaging they are, how their minds are moving, right? And we have created a 25, we call it as a track parameters. They measure them on 25 different parameters, and on this 25 parameters that we measure them on a regular basis as they are problem solving and interacting and showcasing their work, we try to figure out try to predict what kind of a job role they are suitable for, so that we can go more into making that match so that they are perfect for the job role. So our prediction algorithm that sits on million data points today have really helped us to measure them on 25 different parameters and constantly tweak, so that we know how good tailor making we could do, how better matchmaking we could do, so that when they join the company, they are 100% job ready. So that's essentially. And on the fresh talent or the junior talent, I believe that the technology landscape, it's a completely a level playing field. Just because I have been 30 years in tech, I can't take it for guaranteed that I can continue doing tech roles, right? So just because somebody is a year experience cannot say that I cannot do a higher end roles. So a tech has been a level playing field, right? The tech platforms that have come, like Android or any of the apps, it has allowed an individual to go out there and put it out there, right? Their own app, right? And create that level playing field, right? So in reality, tech has been a revolutionizing. Really, the age really doesn't matter. The experience really doesn't matter. What you have, what skill you have, is all that matters. Yeah. So just 2 cents from my side.
Thank you so much, Narayan. Thank you for that. Let me bring in Ritesh here. It's been a while since Ritesh has been listening. So we would like to listen from Ritesh. Obviously, you can add on to the current discussion around the gig and the fresher a bit, but also would be very keen to know, we talk technology, we are talking about challenges in technology hiring, but can you also tell us if technology has brought in solutions to these problems that exist, and have you kind of found something which is good enough to kind of reduce the human burden, and technology help us in bringing in the talent?
Sure, Neeraja. I think like anything, there are two aspects to the coin, and I think Narayan spoke about it. So I don't want to delve deeper into what has already been discussed, but if I talk about how technology is sort of bringing in or assisting, I think there are a couple of things that we've done, right, where predictive modeling, right? I mean, this is something that a lot of companies have been doing, and I think what we've seen is over the last 6 months, even that is not as accurate in predicting whether the person will actually join or not, because the data points that were red flags in the past are the behaviors are not just restricted to that, but of course it does help in terms of figuring out if I'm dealing with certain behaviors early in the hiring process, then maybe as a recruiter I need to sort of tell myself that this is not going to progress, even though doesn't matter how promising it looks. So I think that's an area that we've worked in. It's given us mixed results, but I think as it learns probably, and it learns in this environment, which is very, very volatile, probably it'll be more effective in making us, helping us make, correct predictions. So that's one. The other thing is, from a sourcing perspective, I think, resume passing has been a bit of a help. Again, it takes a bit of time for the system to learn. But I think once it does, I think the sourcing that you can do is a lot more sharper, as opposed to having a large team of people trying to sift data. The challenge actually is, and this is something that I keep saying a lot, which is in an environment where every job description is a fantasy and most resumes are a lie, right? How do you get the two together is a big challenge. So I think technology does help to an extent, but then of course bringing in assessments is another piece that we've been able to look at the skill. Of course, when you hire people, you don't just hire for them for their coding skills, and I think a lot of people spoke about it. That the whole person paradigm and looking at them as people and not just as resources who are coding. So, but if you want to sort of do that screening on coding, saying okay, does this person have the level required? You have Codility, and you've got and you can actually get into a platform, ask them how they went about coding and so on. So you can also check whether what were they thinking when they wrote a particular line of code. So those are things that are helping, but I think the human element cannot be sort of taken away. And I think as subjective as it may be, I think the fit for an organization need to be determined by people, and of course machines will help us to an extent, but beyond that, it's up to us, Neeraja.
Definitely. I mean, you can't just, give away everything to bots. While Sriram did have a, mention on that. Vinay, I would like to kind of hear your thoughts. We've been talking about, okay, the tier 1 cities have it all. And so we want to go to the tier 2, the tier 3, and, the rural locations to hire. But are we also now in a situation where we're saying that, okay, let's go beyond borders, let's go beyond India, because now I don't think there are any boundaries. There is, I know there is talk of, getting back into the office. We talk about hybrid, but, there are organizations that are happy to kind of completely be work from home. So is that a thought process which has come in to say, okay, fine, why do I want to only hire from India for an Indian, kind of a geography?
Yeah, so I think basically this pandemic has brought this irreversible change. So I guess my own organization and many other peer organizations are at a very low percentage of people in IT coming to office. And that percentage could be even lower than 5%. And pandemic has already become sort of technically not cleared by the WHO, but we know that it has become one of the viral fevers. In most of the cases. So, so this work from anywhere, this of course has changed the paradigm, talent availability paradigm completely. So people in any geography can be recruited, and that trend may not change, right? So if talent is available and their work can be done fairly, with reasonable quality, so that would really happen. Now, if I can take 2-3 minutes, just want to show you something. I came across very interesting research paper. So if you're interested, I can share later on. So it talks about the HR architecture and talks about scenario where to buy, where to build, to put it very simply. So they picked up 2 dimensions: value of human capital and uniqueness of human capital, and divided the whole space into 4 quadrants. So where basically the value of talent is high and it is very unique skill. That's quadrant 1. So, so it says that basically internal development will really work. And the organization is really focused on learning. So it's a commitment-based organization, which has been a most, I would say, desirable model so far. Likewise, other extreme is quadrant 3, where the value is low, uniqueness is low. So it's a skill which is easily available, right? So I think all the discussion we have had so far pertains to quadrant 1, where we're saying that the skills are not easily available. So internal development is the first priority, but when that doesn't suffice, we go to the market. So this was basically at a high level a good guideline I found in terms of what to buy, what to build, depending on the value of the capital. So this the second Yeah, the second point is that basically, right from Peter saying is doctrine of learning organization. So learning organization was a basically mantra few years back. Now basically the leapfrog, I would say, advancement technology has created so many solutions and different technologies that need to be. So the velocity of the learning has superseded, has taken over the usual learning journey each of organization had. So that has created an issue. So I feel, and today's basically, I would say, and this may be a going forward model also. So talent to value. So this may be a fundamental shift. So what is the value each employee brings, existing one, new one? So that's a lens basically you look through. And it might probably result into dynamic valuation of talent as well. Right. So if an employee is not bringing the value as he or she was a few years back, that kind of evaluation can happen, and this linear growth of salary throughout the career of 30 years may not be sustainable. So higher the tenure, better it is, and that paradigm, certainly I would say that's a past. So the new paradigm is basically, how does employee make sure that he or she remains relevant, he or she continue to bring commensurate value much higher than the cost it is incurring to the company. That basically would be a common framework for employee and employer to use to stay in tune. The value equation has to be constantly reevaluated, and that would provide a common guide rule of decisions to be taken. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I think both from an organization as well as from a candidate perspective, I think we spoke about it. I think someone did mention about the three kinds of skills that you wish to. I think Sriram said the three kinds of skills that you are, asking the employee to evaluate him or himself or herself against, and ensuring that they don't become redundant in the next quarter, and hence picking up is fantastic. Yeah, that is the value proposition. No discussion can be complete without bringing in a diversity element and a diversity question. So I would like to bring that on for Swati. When all the focus is on winning the war, okay, how do organizations intentionally keep an eye on building a diverse workforce today? Or do you believe this is a way to fight the war itself? Because eventually we are saying there is dearth of talent. So is this now an opportunity for us to kind of reskill and utilize all the strategies that we spoke about on the diverse pool that exists, and then bring them on board, and does it automatically kind of build the diverse workforce? What are your thoughts on that?
Neeraja, I think the first point, the starting point to all of this is, of course, I think whether or not diversity is critical for the organization per se, right? So is the organization thinking diversity? And a lot of organizations, just like ours also, we have a lot of DRGs covering women, gender diversity, PWD, and various others. So I think the starting point, of course, has to be the organization has to believe in it. And thereon, how do you take on steps, both from an intake perspective as well as from a development perspective? So I'll talk a little more about that before I jump into the second part of the question that you asked. I think from an intake perspective, and again, many organizations are doing this, I think just keeping a very close eye in terms of what is a kind of diversity percentage that you can maintain during the hiring process. And of course, talent acquisition team probably is at the core of it, and a team that can actually influence a lot of those conversations and even decisions. So how do you ensure that it happens at the intake stage? And of course, how is it accentuated by various other programs? So just like many others, we also have a women returnship program, which has worked pretty well for us. And I think over the years, we've actually tripled the intake that we've had through the women returnship program. So that is from an intake perspective. And of course, I think thinking even beyond gender. So thinking about PWT or LGBTQ, how do you work very closely with the business in terms of ensuring that you're able to, you have the right buy-in from the business as well as you have the right framework to be able to bring that talent into the organization. The second piece is, of course, development. So with the women talent that you have, and while the war for talent is high, I think gender diversity and a lot of people will resonate. I think finding gender talent within the tech community is even more challenging, right? So how can you develop talent internally rather than always focusing on buying talent from outside? So multiple programs again from, and just to give you a few examples. So for us, our gender proportion at the within the tech community is pretty healthy at the software engineer and senior software engineer, but it tends to dwindle down as you move up the curve, right? So at a lead engineer, for instance, or even principal architects. So we've curated a program which is only focused on helping women move from a senior software engineer or transition from a senior software engineer to a lead engineer. So we recognize that buying talent at that level is going to be a challenge. So how can we nurture people within the organization and create that path for them so that we are providing opportunities, and somewhere it also goes back to some of the other conversations that we have, understanding drivers and being able to support our associates or our employees to make that transition. So multiple program from an intake and a development perspective, but I think to your other point, yes, of course, given the shortage of talent, of course, it forces a lot of us to think, like I said earlier in the conversation, also to think innovatively, think what are the different kinds of talent that we can bring in. But it is a journey that you have to take on because things don't change. I think the ecosystem has to be there, and then you take small baby steps towards achieving that. So hopefully in a couple of years, maybe yes, the proportion of a lot of other diverse talent can be far richer than what it is right now. But I think it's about making the first step, taking the first step.
Thank you, Swati. So yes, it has to be intentional. That's what I get from what I hear from you. Let me just ask Sriram his views on this, because I do remember, reading an article of a CTO of an organization that is into cybersecurity, and where she says that it is important, if we need to beat those cyber criminals, it is important for us to have all kinds of people on the team to be able to think beyond what a cyber criminal is able to think. And I think that's true of any industry that we are in today. So the question again to you is that while there is such a big shortage, and hence we need to kind of recruit for the now and immediate, how does one keep focus on diversity?
So the way, and I'll go straight to something that we're doing to kind of respond to that. So we are currently tasked with creating a cloud native workforce, especially with the advent of so much of cloud work that's landing on the lap, and so much of cloud spend happening globally. And also it's something that I'm driving globally, workforce across 73 countries. So what we're trying to do is bringing in diversity, and diversity, not just gender, but then ethnic, race, and so on and so forth, and from a thought process perspective, where we are building a cloud native workforce that is getting set up for next set of work requirements with the customer across 19 countries now. So we go to campuses in about 90 countries, bring them on board, a very diverse set of individuals, running the same curriculum, same kind of jumpstart and startup programs for these people. And they go back into project environments, which are again global. So somebody getting hired in Romania doesn't just sit in a Romanian based project, or somebody in Poland not there. He's already sitting something in South America or possibly in India as well. Same the guy from here. So in response to our need for very diverse thinking, we are pushing for this while building something like a cloud native workforce, which will bring in that, and the customers are liking it, mainly for two reasons. One, we are trying to move the needle from a very very reactive thinking to a proactive thinking. So when we go back and do our hiring, and been doing this for the last 5 years, we build in our hackathons into the fresher hiring cycle. First of all, we hire city agnostic or college agnostic. We figured out that you can never go against the might of a Cognizant or a TCS or any of the biggies to go and fight for slots on day 0, day 1. So we said, let's set up a platform which is completely agnostic of where the person comes from. We only hire the right talent. So we have a platform that will hire from anywhere in India, for example, in India's case, and then we put them through a hackathon based hiring program. So that's one. Post selection, the guy or girl already goes through a jumpstart program even before coming and joining, because there's always a wait time. We all know we are kind of trying to manage our demand and supply cycle. So even by the time we have the person come on board, there's a fair degree of readiness for her or him to come into a program and get really productive in 30 days. And the lead cycles of 90 days are all crashed, and sometimes it's 2 weeks or 1 week in some cases as well. So so this combined with what we are trying to do, specific service line based hiring, right? So what we want to build in AI analytics, what we want to do in cloud, we're doing very, very focused. And then I know one of our colleagues mentioned here that people are no more an ID number or no more a head count. It's actually, and then startups really offer that to people, right? You go back and give very focused attention, handhold, and this is what the next gen is really wanting, saying that, okay, I've come in, I do my own learning, but then what is it that you are doing? How much can you mentor me? How much can you shape my career? So I think through programs like this, we are trying to go back and say, how do we think and act like a boutique shop where we are able to give importance to her or him to scale career. So I think a bunch of these things we kind of stitch together and bring it for our employee. Neeraja.
Thank you. That was really interesting, insightful. So we are at 10:54. We can go on and on, I'm sure, on this topic, and I'm sure there is many more, insightful, tips that we can take from here, but we do need to close. So I would like to invite Anshula and Swati, and then if somebody else wants to kind of, bring in as a closing comment, after all these discussions that we've heard, is it really a shortage of talent? Or is it that we just need to change our approach on recruitment and retention? Anshula, Swati, definitely would like to hear from you, and then if someone else would join.
Well, shortage of talent as a recruitment, talent acquisition leader, I would always be short of talent. I would never be, I don't think there'll be a day when I'll say, oh, I have enough. And I think that is the hunger that we all should cherish. And I would not call it a bad thing, in the industry today. May this remain a positive hunger for all of us to continue to find something better than what we have. I think two thoughts, Neeraja, that I was just, while I was hearing everybody, I thought I should leave, all of us with as the fraternity fellow professionals. One is, we talk about the people and the mind shifts and socioeconomic shifts and all of that. I think there is also a readiness in terms of how people see corporate, right from their adjustment to the cultural assimilation, to the corporate world, to their readiness and their stickiness to building careers in the corporate. I think the young generation thinks very, very differently. And while as much as they aspire to be, are they really ready to be? When they come to us, my personal experiences, they are just half-baked. And are we doing enough, for them to be there where they actually become thorough, well-bred professionals? So that is the first responsibility I feel as professionals we should take. Number two, in our parents' times, we had a retirement age. And if I truly look at my father, I think he was just he was just looking forward to be retired, he wanted to be retired. But look at us, I'm going to be 50 very soon, and I'm far from retirement, and it's like 10 years and I will be actually retiring. And it's and I have just so many people, my batchmates, my family members who are far from retirement. The look of it, process, from the energy levels, from the experience, everything, they're far from retirement. What are we actually thinking of utilizing their wealth of experiences after they actually, by standards of retirement age, they go beyond? So I think that too. So I'm talking about the millennials, the people who are just starting their careers and their readiness, and I was talking about the people who have actually done a full marathon. And now they have reached a point where we want to write them off, and they're saying, sorry, I'm far from being written off, because my experience is something which is unparalleled. So yeah, just two thoughts.
Absolutely. Thank you for covering that entire spectrum. Swati, your thoughts on that question?
I wouldn't shy away from saying that there is, of course, a shortage of talent. I think especially for niche skills, there is definitely a shortage of talent. But I think that's what creates each of our roles a lot more exciting, right? If there isn't a challenge that pushes us to think differently or think alternate solutions, and what's the fun? So yeah, I think some great insights from all panelists, and I think there are definitely things that we can do to try and, we will never be able to close the gap, but we can definitely reduce the gap.
Thank you. So that was, as again saying, very insightful, food for thought for me to, kind of consume in the work that I do, and also consume as a parent of, soon to be going into a workforce, and what kinds of advice I may, if at all, they take advice from us that I could give. Very, very pleased to have had the opportunity to moderate this discussion. I would now hand it over to Avinash.
Thank you, Neeraja, for leading this. In fact, yeah, it was indeed wonderful having all of you and the thoughts that you kind of brought on board here. I'm sure all of us have learned a lot from one another. And, I mean, it's certainly not enough. 2 hours is not enough for us to, kind of pick a topic like this and go on. I think this can continue, the dialogue can continue. We actually have a group called Leaders Exchange on LinkedIn. We will share with you the link of that. We'd urge you to actively participate, contribute there, so that we can learn from one another on this particular group. And we will look forward to interacting with you in the near future and bring you back on such forums where there's more learning for all of us. Last bit, if all the panelists can come on video, we'd just like to take a picture before we close in. Sharnita, we good? Yeah.
Yes, I got a picture.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all again for the time. Lovely having all of you. You have a great day ahead, and we'll soon reach out to you. Thank you, everyone. Anshula.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ritesh.
Thank you, everybody.
Good day, guys.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you. Good day.
Thanks.
Bye.
We have